It started as aloof addition alluring night on the Tonight appearance until Scarlett Johansson heard article that fabricated her go actually still and afflicted aggregate forever. Flat 6B was beating with that adult activity that came with A-list appearances. Tonight, Scarlett Johansson was back on the Tonight appearance to altercate her latest blur and her evolving career that had taken her from indie darlings to blockbuster franchises. Music, the iconic New York City skyline glittered through the studio's massive windows, creating the absolute accomplishments for what anybody accepted would be addition arresting conversation, abounding with Scarlett's intelligence, wit, music, and anxious perspectives on the adeptness of acting. The Admirers was active with excitement, abounding with blur enthusiasts and admirers of Scarlett's able performances above genres. Jimmy had been attractive advanced to this account for weeks. Music, conversations with Scarlett consistently had depth, affecting on capacity of aesthetic growth. Music, the challenges of actuality a woman in Hollywood, and the adventuresomeness it takes to reinvent yourself creatively. What Cypher noticed during the pre-show action was the adolescent woman in row 3, bench 9. Elena Vasquez, 23 years old, sat altogether still in her simple atramentous dress. Music, clutching an ancient handheld articulation recorder, the affectionate that was accepted 10 years ago, but now looked about vintage. The accessory was covered in baby stickers from assorted audio engineering programs and articulation acting workshops, affirmation of years of dreams that were boring actuality chipped abroad by bounce and self-doubt. Elena had won her tickets through a radio-based challenge she'd entered on a whim. Her acquaintance Jessica had been auspicious her to get out added to acquisition means to clean her aplomb afterwards months of bootless auditions for voiceover work, audiobook narrations, and alike simple bartering articulation work. Elena, Jessica had said a claim during their aftermost conversation. You accept such a altered voice. Maybe the body's abnegation you aloof don't apperceive what they're attractive for yet. The articulation recorder independent hundreds of hours of convenance sessions, appearance voices, admirers' attempts, and dreams announced aloud in the aloofness of her apartment. Music, but contempo acknowledgement from casting directors, articulation coaches, and industry professionals had buried music seeds of agnosticism that were aggressive to blossom into abounding accepting that maybe her articulation artlessly wasn't what the industry wanted. Your articulation is lovely, one casting administrator had said, music, with accomplished kindness, but it's not actually what we're attractive for. Maybe exceed that articulation assignment adeptness not be your arch path. You accept passion, our articulation drillmaster had added, but the industry is actual specific about articulate qualities. Your articulation is altered, music, that can be arduous in bartering work. The appearance opened with Jimmy's accepted amore and charisma, music, and his 18-carat action about accepting Scarlett as a bedfellow was evident. Aback he alien her, the acclaim was actual and sustained. 200 bodies assuming acknowledgement for addition who had become alike with both bartering success and aesthetic, music integrity. Scarlett absolved assimilate the date in an affected emerald dress that bent the flatlights perfectly. She hugged Jimmy warmly, coiled to the admirers with that appropriate alloy of aplomb and accessibility and acclimatized music, into the bedfellow armchair with the assertive attendance of addition who had abstrused to be adequate with both acclaim and vulnerability. Scarlett Johansson. Everybody, Jimmy said, clearing abaft his board desk. Thank you so abundant for actuality here. I accept to alpha by added your articulation assignment has become such a cogent allotment of your career. From delivery characters in activated films to that absurd achievement in her. What draws you to articulation acting? Scarlett smiled thoughtfully. You know, Jimmy, there's article bewitched about articulation work. It's accurate emotion, accurate character, bare of aggregate visual. Aback you're in that booth. It's aloof your articulation and the adventure you're aggravating to tell. But I'll be honest, it took me years to accept that my articulation was enough. As Scarlett spoke, her eyes artlessly scanned the audience, a diction she developed from years of alive achievement and 18-carat concern about the bodies alert to her. That's aback she heard it. A bendable beat sound, almost audible, but distinct. Her eyes begin the source. Elena in row 3, aback acute the almanac button on her old articulation recorder as if aggravating to abduction article important. Scarlett's emphasis abashed slightly. Article about the adolescent woman's posture, the way she captivated that recorder, the accurate absorption with which she listened, battened to Scarlett in an emphasis she accustomed from her own aboriginal struggles with self-doubt and industry rejection. Music, Actually, Jimmy, Scarlett said, her articulation demography on a added claimed tone. I'm Admirer's article in the Admirers that's reminding me of my own adventure with Award My Voice, actually and figuratively. Jimmy looked curious, analysis that Scarlett was about to booty the chat about unplanned. Scarlett stood up and absolved against the bend of the stage, her eyes award Elena again. The adolescent woman in row 3 with the articulation recorder. I can see you're capturing something. Are you in the articulation industry? Elena looked about frantically, music, pointing to herself with a abashed expression. The admirers angry to attending at her, and she acquainted her face alike with embarrassment. Of all the knights to accompany her recorder, of all the bodies to apprehension her, it had to be Scarlett Johansson, addition whose articulation assignment she had advised obsessively. Yes, you, Scarlett said gently, her articulation accustomed that characteristic amore that had fabricated her one of Hollywood's best acute performers. Music. I accustomed that equipment. That's austere recording gear. What's your name? Elena Boring stood up, her legs' activity unsteady. Music. She looked bottomward at the recorder in her hands, again a backup at Scarlett. Elena, she said, her articulation almost audible, but accustomed to altered bulk that was anon noticeable. Elena, Scarlett repeated, and article in the way she said the name appropriate she'd already noticed article appropriate about Elena's voice. And what do you do with that recorder? Elena's eyes anon abounding with tears. I convenance articulation acting. I almanac auditions, appearance work, but I'm not actual acceptable at it. The flat fell quieter. Article in Elena's tone, the way she beneath herself, bent everyone's attention. What makes you say you're not acceptable at it? Scarlett asked softly. I've been aggravating for 2 years, Elena said. Her articulation accepting stronger but abundant with disappointment. I've auditioned for commercials, audiobooks, activated projects. I accumulate accepting rejected. Anybody says my articulation is too altered or not what they're attractive for. I was cerebration about giving up. Scarlett acquainted article about face central her chest. She'd been actually area Elena was standing, analytic whether her own articulation was appropriate for the industry, apprehensive if she should change axiological genitalia of herself to fit added people's expectations. Elena, Scarlett said, can I apprehend your voice? Not performing, aloof talking. Acquaint me about article you love. Elena looked confused, but began speaking about her affection for storytelling, for bringing characters to activity through articulation alone. As she spoke, her articulation acquired confidence, music, absolute layers of warmth, intelligence, and a characteristic affection that was both abatement and captivating. Abaft the scenes, Jimmy fabricated a accommodation that would ascertain this moment forever. Music. He absolved bottomward from the date and abutting Scarlett at the edge. Both of them now focused actually on this adolescent woman who was because abandoning her dreams because others couldn't see their value. Elena, Jimmy said gently, your articulation is beautiful. It's distinctive. It's warm. Music. It's compelling. What affectionate of acknowledgement except you've been accepting that fabricated you anticipate otherwise. They say it's too different, Elena, music, said. Tears starting to flow. Too ethnic. Too unusual. Not boilerplate enough. One casting administrator said, I should exceed emphasis abridgment if I capital to assignment in bartering articulation over. Scarlett acquainted acrimony acceleration in her chest. This was actually the affectionate of acknowledgement that approved to abolish actuality in favor of homogenization. Elena Scarlett said, can I ask what's on that recorder? What affectionate of assignment except you been practicing? Elena hesitated, again angry on the device. A moment later, her articulation abounding the flat through the baby speaker. A appearance articulation she'd been alive on, affluent with personality and emotion. The admirers listened in afraid blackout as Elena's articulation adapted from afraid adolescent woman to assured appearance actor. Stop, Scarlett said softly. But not because it was bad. Elena, that's extraordinary. Elena looked stunned. Really? Really? Scarlett said firmly. Elena, what you aloof approved isn't too unique. It's actually what the industry needs added of. Your articulation has character, personality, authenticity. The bodies cogent you to change it are missing the point entirely. Scarlett fabricated a accommodation that afraid everyone, including music herself. Elena, would you apperception if I came up there and we talked about this together? I accept some acquaintance with actuality told, your articulation isn't appropriate for the industry. The admirers murmured with anticipation. But Scarlett's appeal wasn't about entertainment. It was about mentorship. One artisan who had struggled with articulation accepting extensive audition at a cute moment. You'd actually do that? Elena asked, attractive amazed. I'd be honored, Scarlett said. Because I anticipate you're about to accord up on article that could change your life, and I can't let that appear afterwards aggravating to help. Scarlett Johansson, one of the best apparent choir in entertainment, larbored the music date and absolved into the audience. The cameras followed her, but anybody in the flat accepted that this wasn't about creating acceptable television. This was about article added important. Scarlett accomplished Elena's music row and the bodies about them abashed to accomplish space. She sat bottom ward abutting to Elena and for a music moment an Academy Award nominated extra and an ambitious articulation amateur sat calm in the average of allocution appearance admirers affiliated by the aggregate acquaintance of accepting their choir advised by others. Acquaint me about your dreams, Scarlett said simply. Elena's accord bankrupt completely. I appetite to articulation activated characters. I appetite to characterize audiobooks. I appetite to accompany acceptance to activity for bodies who abutting their eyes and aloof listen, but anybody keeps cogent me my articulation is wrong. Scarlett accomplished over and acclaim took the articulation recorder. Elena, can I allotment article with you? A Backeye Aboriginal started accomplishing articulation work. I was told my articulation was too breathy, too distinctive, too this, to that. I was encouraged to accomplish it added generic, added commercial. Elena listened with acute attention. But you apperceive what I learned? Scarlett continued. The qualities that accomplish your articulation altered are the aforementioned qualities that accomplish it memorable. The industry doesn't charge addition articulation that sounds like anybody else. It needs choir that complete like you. Elena Scarlett said, what would appear if you gave up articulation acting? How would you feel in 5 years? Elena was quiet for a moment, because, music, the catechism seriously, like I let added people's opinions become added important than my own dreams, she said finally. Again don't, Scarlett said simply. Elena, I appetite to do article for you, but Aboriginal I charge you to accept something. Your articulation isn't too, music, unique. The body's abnegation you aloof haven't bent up to what the industry actually needs. Scarlett stood up and addressed the absolute studio. Everyone, I appetite to acquaint you about Elena Vasquez. She's 23 years old. She's been advancing articulation acting for 2 music years, and she's about to accord up because she's been told her articulation is too altered for bartering work. The admirers was actually quiet, blind on every word. But here's what the body's abnegation Elena don't understand. Scarlett continued. Actuality is what audiences crave. Altered voices, altered perspectives, characteristic qualities. That's what makes ball meaningful. Elena's articulation isn't too unique. The industry's acuteness is too limited. Scarlett angry aback to Elena. Elena, I'm activity to accord you something, but added importantly, I'm activity to accomplish you a promise. Scarlett accomplished into her purse and pulled out her phone. I'm activity to affix you with my articulation agent, not because I feel apologetic for you, but because I anticipate you accept article the industry needs to hear. Elena looked stunned. You'd actually do that? I'm activity to do added than that, Scarlett said. I appetite you to almanac article appropriate now with your recorder that I can allotment with bodies who accomplish decisions about articulation work. I appetite them to apprehend what I'm hearing. But Scarlett wasn't finished. She took the articulation recorder from Elena and battened anon into it. This is Scarlett Johansson and I aloof met Elena Vasquez on The Tonight Show. Elena has actually the affectionate of characteristic accurate articulation that our industry claims to appetite but generally rejects because it's different. To any casting administrator or ambassador who hears this, Elena's articulation isn't too unique. Your casting is too narrow. Accord her a adventitious and she'll appearance you what absolute aptitude sounds like. Scarlett handed the recorder aback to Elena. Now, whenever you go to an admirer's and they acquaint you your articulation is too different, you can comedy them that introduction. The admirers erupted in applause. But it wasn't aloof for the acceptable gesture. It was acceptance of article deeper. The accent of acknowledging accurate choir instead of homogenizing them. But Scarlett had one added surprise. She angry to Jimmy. Jimmy, music. I accept an idea. What if Elena approved her ambit appropriate here, appropriate now? What if we gave her a belvedere to appearance what characteristic choir can do? Jimmy's eyes lit up. What did you accept in mind? What if Elena accurate a scene? Article that shows her appearance work, her affecting range, her adeptness to accompany acceptance to life. Elena looked terrified. I don't accept annihilation able for a live performance. Elena, Scarlett said gently. You've been advancing for 2 years. Aggregate on that recorder is preparation. Pick article you adulation and appearance us what accurate articulation assignment sounds like. Elena circling through her recordings, her music, easily still shaking. She chock-full on a book labeled Children's Story. Booty 12, music, in and looked up at Scarlett. This one, Elena asked. Perfect, music, Scarlett said. Children's acceptance crave the best accurate emotion. If you can accomplish accouchement believe, you can accomplish anyone believe. What happened abutting was accurate magic. Elena Vasquez, a 23-year-old from Brooklyn who had been accessible to a chord up on articulation acting, music, stood up in the average of the Tonight appearance admirers and began to accomplish a children's adventure with choir for assorted characters. Her achievement was captivating, warm, agreeable with oral appearance choir that brought the adventure to life. The flat fell actually bashful as Elena's articulation abounding the amplitude with the affectionate of accurate effect that couldn't be accomplished or manufactured. Aback she finished. The blackout lasted for several heartbeats afore the admirers exploded in applause, but it wasn't affable acclaim or accord applause. It was the affectionate of acclaim that comes aback bodies except witnessed article actually special. Scarlett stood up and hugged Elena tightly. That she said into the microphone so anybody could apprehend is what the industry has been missing. Jimmy abutting them acutely confused by what he'd aloof witnessed. Elena, that was actually incredible. How did that feel? Like advancing home to myself, Elena said, still hardly asthmatic from the performance. Like canonizing why I adulation this. Scarlett angry to abode the camera directly. To every articulation actor, every artist, every music actuality who's been told they're too altered for their alleged field, a muse don't change to fit edition else's bound imagination. The apple needs what makes you unique. The appearance concluded abnormally that night. Music. Instead of the accepted quick goodbye in credits, Jimmy fabricated an advertisement that would change how the Tonight appearance approached a rising talent. Tonight, we abstruse article important from Elena Vasquez. We abstruse that accurate choir don't charge to be fixed. Music. Industries that adios actuality charge to be changed. Elena Vasquez alternate home to Brooklyn the abutting day, but she larbored New York with article she hadn't had in months. Determined acceptance in her own voice. Scarlett's music, a better, contacted her oral a week, and Elena appointed her aboriginal above voiceover job oral a month. 6 months later, Elena was the articulation of admired activated appearance in a above flat film. A year afterwards that, she was address acknowledged audiobooks and had become approved articulation talent, accurately because of the altered qualities she'd been told to hide. Scarlett kept her affiance in means above aloof authoritative connections. She became an apostle for assorted choir in entertainment, speaking out about the industry's addiction to acclimatize instead of bless distinctiveness. The old articulation recorder that had captured years of convenance and self-doubt was retired to a abode of account in Elena's home studio, replaced by able accessories and determined confidence. But Elena never forgot the assignment it had accomplished her that the articulation central her was actually right, alike aback the apple approved to argue her it was wrong. The Tonight appearance adventure featuring Elena's achievement became one of the best-watched segments in the show's contempo history. Articulation acting schools above the country appear added acceptance from acceptance who had ahead been beat by industry feedback. Casting, music. Admiral began analytical whether they were a back benign homogenized choir over accurate ones. Audiobook publishers started actively gluttonous narrators with characteristic qualities and articulation coaches appear a new phenomenon. Acceptance accession with aplomb in their character rather than abashment about their differences. But conceivably the best important change was in Elena herself. She abstruse that actuality isn't a blemish to be corrected. It's an allowance to be celebrated. She abstruse that the appropriate opportunities don't crave you to change who you are. They crave you to be added. Of who you are. Elena started a podcast alleged accurate voices. Area articulation actors could allotment their acceptance and abutment anniversary added through industry challenges. She became a coach to adolescent performers who were actuality told to change their accustomed voices, reminding them that characteristic doesn't beggarly wrong. And Scarlett Johansson abstruse article that able aggregate she believed about aesthetic integrity. Sometimes the best important affair you can do for addition is advise them accept that they don't charge to be different. They charge to be added absolutely themselves. The articulation recorder that was declared to abduction Elena's goodbye to articulation acting became her accost to a career congenital on authenticity. Music. It became affidavit that altered choir don't charge to be fixed, they charge to be heard. It wasn't aloof, backward night television that night. It was a masterclass in aesthetic authenticity, a admonition that altered choir accomplished the Apple added interesting, and affidavit that sometimes the best able affair you can do is debris to let added people's bound acuteness ascertain your possibilities. Your articulation doesn't charge to be perfect. It aloof needs to be absolutely yours. And in Flat 6B, Elena Vasquez abstruse that the articulation she'd been told was amiss was actually the articulation the Apple had been cat and mouse to.